if I'm not teaching nuclear science and technology when I make these videos, then it's generally going to be addressing anti-nuclear rhetoric, basically the scientific misinformation that's out there regarding nuclear energy. There's a lot of that out there, so there's a big need for people to address all of that misinformation about nuclear energy. Funny thing is that every once in a while, well, maybe not so every once in a while, but more often than I would like, I get misinformation from what you would say are the pro-nuclear people, or at least that's how they identify themselves. And these are the people, I would say, that say we should not use nuclear energy today as it is. We need to only do thorium. And I would say that's actually a myth, or at least the arguments that they use to argue we need to do thorium instead of uranium is a myth. Unless it's that one point that thorium is more abundant than uranium. That's true. Thorium is more abundant than uranium, but all the other arguments that I've seen are myths when it comes to why we should use thorium. So I'm not going to say that thorium is a myth. Thorium is real, but the arguments for thorium against regular uranium fission is based on a lot of misinformation. Here's an example right here. This person, they want to claim that it's safer and it has less waste. Wow. So the truth is that the only real viable reactor technology for thorium is a molten salt reactor. And a molten salt reactor does not need thorium at all. You can do it with thorium, but you can do it with uranium. Anything you can do with thorium, you can do with uranium. So all of that just goes out the window. Right now, we have an infrastructure for creating a lot of uranium. We don't have the same infrastructure to create a lot of thorium. We could build that. It's not that difficult to do. We could certainly do that. But there is nothing you can do with thorium that you can't do with uranium today just using molten salt reactors. The salt plug, they like to say that the salt plug means that it's meltdown proof. Well, that doesn't make it meltdown proof at all. What it means is that the likelihood of a catastrophic failure is lowered. Because the salt plug, yes, it will melt if the reactor gets too hot, but that does require that the salt plug is working correctly and that the drain is working correctly and that it's not plugged up, or that the heat excursion is slow enough that it will melt the plug before you actually have the molten salt boiling. Now, it would be difficult to do that. You could argue that it's impossible, but it's not impossible. You put too much fuel into one of those and you can get an excursion. You can get it to go prompt critical if you put too much fuel into any reactor. And so to say that it's meltdown proof is taking it too far. You can say that the likelihood is arbitrarily small, and that would be correct. But to say it's impossible, it's not impossible. It is definitely possible. And then there's the argument that you cannot make nuclear weapons with thorium. That's another common one. The probably the most unique difference, besides that the fact that thorium is 3 times more abundant than uranium, is that if I use a thorium cycle, I can do something I can't do with a uranium cycle, and that's make basically pure fissile material. Fissile material, that's like plutonium-239 or uranium-235. If I'm doing a plutonium bomb, it's very difficult to get over around, say, 95% fissile material in a plutonium weapon. And it's extremely difficult also to get uranium up above around 90%, just using enrichment with these centrifuges. It's quite difficult. It's possible, but it's difficult to get it above that. But if I'm doing thorium, I can basically make 99.9% pure fissile material, unlike with any other. So to say that it's more non-proliferation resistant, no. It's got to have the same proliferation controls you would have with a uranium cycle in a molten salt reactor. And so there's a lot of hype, and I think that that was promoted by people that think they know more about nuclear science and technology than they really do. That would be my opinion, based on the fact that there's so much misinformation out there about thorium, and people are listening to it and believing that it's true. So I hope this helps. Thorium is great. I believe we actually should absolutely invest in it, in as much as we invest in fusion. I think there's as much future in fusion as there is in thorium. But thorium is going to be a lot easier to attain than fusion. Thorium we could actually do today if we wanted to. If we could actually go and build something and do a test reactor that we are confident would work with thorium. We can't do that with fusion today, but we can with thorium. So thorium is even more attractive than fusion. And on top of that, uranium, the fertile component that you would use, like the uranium-238 that you would use like the thorium-232, in that uranium, it's got a half-life of about 4.5 billion years, about the age of the Earth. But thorium's got a half-life of about 14 billion years. So thorium's going to be around a lot longer But in those kinds of ages, I mean, who knows what humanity will be if we're even still around by then. I mean, that's basically the age of the Earth right there, just for uranium, and with thorium is the age of the universe. So we absolutely should be investing in that. I think we should be investing more in thorium than in fusion because it's far more promising, and we're going to be able to get a return on our investment much faster. But there's a lot of myths about thorium, just like there's a lot of myths out there about nuclear energy, and that it's got some kind of infinite risk, and it's an intolerable risk, an unacceptable risk. All of those arguments that you just need to get rid of nuclear altogether because any probability of cancer is an unacceptable probability of cancer, and that's where we are today. So I hope this helped. I keep seeing these arguments about thorium that are not based on scientific fact. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, that you learned something, and you have a wonderful day.